Welcome to Bruce Tracy Photography. Today I want to share with you the scariest photograph I've ever taken. We've all been in those situations where you just feel a little bit uncomfortable when you're taking a photograph. Well, this one was downright scary, and I want to set up the scene for you real quick. So I decided that I wanted to take a picture of the Milky Way setting behind a Joshua tree. I don't live too far from the desert. In fact, from my house I can get to the Pacific Ocean, Ventura, California, in about 50 minutes. I can get to the top of an 8,800 foot peak at Mount Pinos. I can get there in about 50 minutes. And I can get out to the desert in about 45 minutes. So I live in a pretty good spot for landscape photography because I've got a lot of options to pick from. Now for this particular photograph, I picked a spot in the desert. It's a little state park. Actually, I don't even think it's a state park. It's more of a state designated area. I can't think of the name of it right now, so I'm going to put a photograph of the picture I took of it right here. But this is the place I decided to go out to in the middle of the desert. Now keep in mind, to get a Milky Way photograph, I'm going to have to be out there in the middle of the night. I got to time it so the Milky Way is right behind the cactus. It's going to be late. This particular place is in the middle of nowhere. There's not a house for miles. In fact, there's nothing for miles around this spot. But I decided I was going to pick it because I'd been there before. I know it has a path that goes out into the desert, and I figured I'm pretty safe this far away from people at a place I've been to before with a little path. So I headed out there in the middle of the day to scout out the cactus I wanted to pick. I wish I would have taken some video. I hadn't, but what I did is I got some pictures of the park. What I want to do now is show you a few pictures of the Joshua trees just so you get a feel of what this place looks like. Here it is. Alright, so that's the place that I was going to go to set up my photograph for this cactus and Milky Way photo. I picked out the perfect cactus. It was about 200 yards from the road, not too far out into the desert, but not too close to the road either. I figured it would be the perfect spot. I used my phone app, I think I used Photo Pills, to see exactly where the Milky Way was going to line up behind this Joshua tree at the exact moment that I wanted to get that photograph. So I was all set. I'd scouted my location, everything was set, I headed home. I still had about 2 weeks to go until I had a new moon. You want a new moon for the Milky Way, you want the sky as dark as possible so that Milky Way really pops. So 2 weeks later, I get my gear together, I throw it into my truck, and I drive out. It was about an hour and 15 minutes from my house to this particular spot. So at 1 a.m., I drive out to the middle. Actually, I left my house around midnight, but I got to this spot. It was about 1 a.m. when I got there. So I get there, I park the car, I look out into the distance, and strangely, there's a light out by my cactus. Now, not being very smart, my first thought was, that's cool. The state has put little solar lights out there to light the path in case someone shows up at night. Got all my gear together, put the backpack on, grabbed my tripod, and I start walking out into the middle of the desert. As I'm getting closer to the cactus, the Joshua tree, I start to realize that that light, it's not a solar light. And as I got to about 40 yards away from it, I realized what I was looking at was an old Coleman lantern sitting in the middle of the path, not too, maybe 20 yards from the cactus I'd picked out. And my heart stopped beating because a Coleman lantern is either running on propane or a battery, and it hit me. There's no way that thing's been sitting there for days. It's been sitting there for less than a couple of hours. Whoever had that lantern had been in that spot fairly recently. Being a stupid photographer, I figured I'd taken all this time to come out here, I'm going to get my photograph. So I set up my tripod, got right down behind the cactus. I took, I think, 3 20-second photographs of this Milky Way behind the Joshua tree. As soon as the last exposure finished, grabbed everything, and I booked it out of there back to the car. Now, looking back on it, I really wish I'd have taken video of that lantern in the middle of the desert, because that would have added a whole lot to this video. But at the moment, I was pretty much scared to death, and I just wanted to get out of there. Once I got to my car, I flew down the road to get back home, and then it hit me. That lantern was sitting there because either somebody was walking through the desert, and something scared them so bad that they dropped the lantern and ran, in which case, that's not a place I wanted to be, or the person who had that lantern was sitting behind one of those cactuses as I was out there taking my photograph. And that too is a very scary thought, to think that I was in the middle of nowhere at 1 a.m. in the middle of the desert, and there are stories about the California desert at night. I was alone out there, miles from anybody else, and there could have been somebody sitting behind the cactus watching me take this photograph. As I was driving home, my heart was racing. By far the scariest photograph I've ever taken. Just one little abandoned Coleman lamp put the fear of God into me. But I did get the photograph. But I'm going to end this video now by showing you that picture, and I will see you guys next time on Bruce Tracy Photography.